Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, another episode of the Unported playlist where we take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time, and today we're taking a look at Super Chase, released by Taito. It's a sequel to Chase HQ, a game we showed on the channel under the FM Towns and Marty series, and a prequel to Chase HQ 2, which runs on the Taito X series of PC arcade boards, and is just an absolute awesome arcade combat racing game. Before we get too far involved, if you can do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined, we got a Patreon link down there as well if you want to support the channel. But even the intro to this game is amazing. I love the artwork on it, I love the colors, I love the music, I love the story it's telling. They really did as much as they possibly could to make this intro and the game in general kind of feel very cinematic and almost like you're playing something like Miami Vice, the game, and that's always a fun thing. You even get that title card with the explosions in the background. But if you ever played Chase HQ or Super Chase or any of the other games of the series, you're going to be familiar with how it works. First, there's a crime that's going to occur, and then you're going to get a video of what you're supposed to do on the screen in your car, kind of like Knight Rider and Kit, and then you're going to be dumped right into the action. And there is only one goal in Super Chase. That is to continually ram into your opponent's car until they blow up. You need to do it within the time frame, and you need to make sure that you don't take too much damage to your vehicle. But everything about this game is just pure fun. I love the color palette that they chose. It really feels bright and vibrant. I love all the sprite scaling effects that are going on, especially for 92 when this game came out. It looks really good. And you'll see down at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, those are kind of hard to determine what they are, but they're actually turbos, and you want to save those up because when you get close to the boss of the level's vehicle, you want to have those turbos to be able to really ram hard into them. And you'll see the first stage is really just a tutorial. We're able to get to that boss character very quickly, and now we're just going to keep hammering on his car until he's dead. And the game will even tell you when you want to be able to use that nitro boost. And I love here, we're going through a pizza parlor and there's pizzas just stuck to the screen, and behind that there is a pier that we're driving on with all these sailboats to the left and right. And the course does get quite narrow, and you'll see if you actually complete it at the wrong spot, the game just pops you into the ether, and that's not an emulation issue. I've played the original arcade game as well, and that can happen. But again, moving on to the next stage where the game really starts, a terrorist bullet building up, and we're moving right into the video showing us who we're looking for and what we need to do. And I love, again, how cinematic this game feels because it's constantly giving you story elements and different visual transitions to get you into the next stage, and it is just a lot of fun to play and to follow along with. And there actually is a prototype to this game floating around as well that only has 4 stages, a little bit different music and graphics. I don't know if it was just a location test that got dumped or what, but it is kind of hard to find, but it is out there. I played it before, but just play the release version because that really is the one you're going to want to play. But I love here we jump across that water, and because we weren't going fast enough, we kind of hit it and slowed down because the name of the game for Super Chase is Maintain Your Speed, because we constantly have to be battling against that timer to be able to get to the boss, and anything we hit, anything we miss, you'll see here, I have to continue and keep going. So it's basically a racing obstacle course with an arcade racing combat game mixed up within it. And you're going to be traveling in areas that are really wide open, and then you're going to be going through tunnels and buildings, so it's always giving you something. What you don't want to do is drive directly into the side of a tunnel because you're going to smash your car and lose about 5 seconds each time you do that. But it is just a super fun game to play, and I've enjoyed talking about the entire Chase HQ series. There's only one game, SCI, that I haven't covered yet on the Saturn and the PC Engine, and I am sure one day I will get around to doing that because these are some of my favorite arcade racing combat games of all time, which is to say there's not a ton of like it, and that's probably why Chase HQ, the entire series, is my favorite, but it's always one that I have a lot of fun with. And I additionally did a video on Lucky and Wild, released by Namco, that was very similar, and if you check out the Unported playlist, you'll find that game down there as well. But I will say, for these two series, Chase HQ is definitely the better of the two. And you'll see we've arrested our character right back there, and it definitely, the costumes, the overall vibe, it kind of just feels like Miami Vice, which is a great television series, and I think these games are definitely taking inspiration from them. What I'll let you do is watch a little bit of the next round without me talking because the soundtrack is quite great, and I'll come back in about a minute and talk more about Super Chase, but enjoy! And we've defeated the boss for the area and we can move on. And you'll have seen that stage as well, that there's a lot of sprites. The motorcycle lands on your hood. There's different guys that attach to the hood of your car with baseball bats. A lot of different things that you have to deal with in each and every level. And now moving on to Texas, we're going to be basically jumping over this entire rail car and we're going to be switching to a trailer. So you're not just going to be driving your car the entire time. Each level gives you a slightly different vehicle to work with, and they all do handle slightly differently. So it's not just going to be the same car the entire time. We now are in a semi, and it's a lot harder to navigate because this road's narrow. There's all these silos and towers on the side of the road, and the steering is just not going to be as quick as obviously we're driving a semi-truck and not a sports car. So there's definitely enough diversity in a game that only has one goal, which is to ram into your opponent's car as many times as it tells you. And I do like that Taito did as much as they could to keep the formula fresh, because at this point in time when Super Chase came out, it was the third game in the series, so they definitely wanted to do something a little bit different just to give you a little bit more to do. But I have never seen this arcade cabinet in arcades outside of the early 90s. I don't know if it didn't do very well. Getting sales stats and popularity stats on arcade cabinets from the 90s is quite difficult if it's not something like a big Sega hit like Daytona or something like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. You're not quite sure how they did, but generally, if you don't see the cabinets anymore these days, you know it didn't do very well whatsoever, because you're still going to see Mortal Kombat cabinets, Street Fighter cabinets, House of the Dead cabinets, and Daytona cabinets in a lot of arcades. So if you still see old cabinets, the general rule of thumb is it was probably a massive hit, and they're still popular nostalgia-wise, and barcades and things still keep them in. If you don't see a game at all whatsoever, something like Super Chase, then you're going to know that it probably didn't do very well, which is super unfortunate because this is an awesome game, and it's one that I wish got ported to something like the Sega Saturn, because the Saturn was a 2D powerhouse that could do really good sprite scaling, so I think it would have been great on there. But of course, once the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, and Saturn came out, people were so interested in 3D games that a lot of really good 2D games either didn't really get reviewed well, they didn't sell well, or companies didn't even bother bringing them out because what the market wanted were the 3D games back then. So this is a real big blind spot for arcades. You know, early to mid 90s 2D games, they just didn't get translated over to consoles in the same way that a lot of the 3D arcade games would have. But like I said, this emulates perfectly on MAME. There were no graphical glitches. The game runs at a lock 60 frames per second the entire time you're playing it, so it is a really easy game to download and experience. And if you do want to buy an original arcade PCB, they're not the cheapest things, but they're not terrible. But you do need to know how to wire up a wheel and pedal set to this, because it is a driving game, so you're not going to just be able to plug this into a cabinet or a super gun and expect it to work in the same way that something like a Street Fighter 2 board would work. And definitely as you get further on into the game, it does become much harder. It's not the cheapest game in the world, but it would probably cost you $15 to $20 to see the ending of this game in arcades if you were pumping quarters into it. Because you'll see here as we're fighting this boss, there's a lot of branching paths, there's a lot of traffic in our way, there's bushes, there's things on the side of the road that I just rammed into. So the further you get, the more difficult it gets. But it always feels like if you're not succeeding, that's your fault. You didn't steer right, you were going too fast, you didn't use your brake, you didn't use your turbo at the right time. It's one of those games where when you aren't doing well and you spend another credit, you know it's because you could have done better. Some arcade games don't feel like that, and you think that they're just really trying to rob you of your money, but Super Chase is definitely one where your mistake is your own mistake. But I'm curious, has anyone ever played this game before? Did you ever see it in arcades? Have you seen an arcade cabinet for it recently? Because a lot of times when I put these videos up, someone will say, hey, this cabinet's actually in my small hometown in my local bowling alley, and I get to find out that, hey, at least somewhere in the world these things still do exist. But short of that, we will be back next Sunday with an episode in the Unported Arcade Game playlist series, and we'll have videos on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday as well. Like I mentioned earlier, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. It takes a lot of time and effort to make each and every one of these videos, and we really appreciate it. And like I said, any questions, leave them below. We'll chat with you guys and not talking to the echo chamber. But we've gotten what looks like Burt Reynolds underneath that car, and we have beaten the game. I'll upload a full gameplay, but otherwise, short of that, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.